r/TooAfraidToAsk. Specimaskman says, anyone had a great marriage that resulted in divorce? Like things were great at first from dating 4 years to a great marriage life, then things slowly started to slip. I wonder that are the causes that resulted the downfall of a great marriage? Babowski says, she decided she wanted children. I realized it wasn't for me. We talked it out for a year, but realized there was only one conclusion. We decided to hold a divorce ceremony where we gave each other's rings. We are both currently in relationships, still run the business we built together, and we meet up once a month for dinner as friends. I would love to meet her children one day. Amone69 says, this hits home. Thanks for sharing. I commend you for being able to make such a difficult decision together. It sounds like it was the right one in the end. Babowski says, in a way it was more difficult because we hadn't fallen out of love or didn't get along, which was why we tried too hard to make it work before realizing there was only one solution. It took us time to grieve the end of our marriage and to recover, but we managed. It's now been 3 years and we are both in much better places. My advice to anyone is that no matter how amicable, there is a painful adjustment period you need to work through. Large Set 4106 says, we were together for 28 years and married for 25 years. Everyone thought we were the picture perfect couple. We traveled, had a nice house, did everything together, had 2 beautiful children, read each other's minds, and looked out for each other 24/7. She was diagnosed with breast cancer at 40 and beat it with a partial mastectomy, radiation, as well as mediation for life. Being that I was her first, all those years ago, this experience started to raise questions, stupid questions in her mind. Instead of asking them or sharing her thoughts, as we always did, without question or judgment, she kept them to herself, formed her own answers, and let those answers become her reality, her belief, her life. I was 49, and she was 45, and decided that I shouldn't be her one and only, and started talking to a divorced guy at her work. He played her, and played her well, and after throwing me a surprise 50th birthday party with family and friends, she ducked out at the end of everything, and went and slept with him for the first time. After that, she decided that he was the love of her life and they would live happily ever after. Once I found out about the affair, and she began to provide me all the details about their relationship and her plans to divorce me, I told her he was nothing but a player, and she was just a plaything. Her family and our friends told her that, and she told us how wrong we all were. I could tell her almost word for word how he would react or say to various things. A day or two later, she would tell me that I was 100% accurate, and how did I know? I told her it was easy if I wanted to get in 10th of a hot, married woman, and continue to have access to her goods, that is what I would say or do to get her. I would just play the game. Eventually, he even told her that she was nothing more than a FWB, and that he wanted nothing more. She told him that he was saying that because she was married, and it would all be different once she was divorced. Well, she divorced me, lost all of our friends, the respect of our now adult children, and even her own family, but she didn't care. 4 days after the divorce was final, and she was pushing him for a deeper relationship, he tossed her to the side, telling her, now that you're single, the thrill of sleeping with a married woman is gone. You can still be a FWB with the other girls I have, but that would be it for us. Jump forward now 8 years, and she is engaged to a nice guy, different guy, who was a coworker of hers from the same place. They've been engaged for nearly 5 years, but until she breaks off the friendship with the guy she had the affair with on me, he will not marry her. Her stance is that no one will tell her who she can be friends with, and she will not. Meanwhile, I'm happily remarried to a beautiful woman, absolutely love my life, our life and my stepchildren. We are living our best, while my ex is doing. Fist the Papa 6969 says, Fricking hell, what a nightmare that must have been to live through. Legitimately my worst fear. My wife and I are also each other's firsts for everything, and we are incredibly happy, been together 15 years. She's an amazing person and I know she'd never do anything like that, neither would I. The thought of her even wanting to be with someone else, that is emotional affair, is soul crushing to me. She's all I want, and I hope I'm all she'll ever want forever, and so I do my best to be the best husband and partner I can be. It's just an irrational fear of mine that I have BC of my own issues. My heart aches for you, brother. r/TooAfraidToAsk. 19 Senzafine81 says, why is eating ass referred to as tossing salad? Chefatupbra says, I watch a lot of prison shows, and one guy said in prison they use salad dressing to eat ass and mask the flavor. After a while they started calling it tossing salad. Madremarkable 732 says, I guess I'm wondering why you would need to eat ass so badly that you put salad dressing on it? Edwin Kfoolhadi says, the person eating the ass does not want to eat that ass. That salad dressing is a small mercy. Lazadab says, which is a bummer because it used to mean making lots of money. Nania Fibezinus 1492 says, pun intended? Edge 4 says, gives new meaning to the Frasier theme song. Pain Monster says, wait till you hear what scrambled eggs refers to. Siege 1986 says, first time I heard it was in a Chris Rock stand-up. J4,750,614 says, I never got that either. Trucks Goldens says, because of the croutons. Sm Thompson says, well, this has ruined Frasier for me. Noflis says, why is it called eating ass? Trapadinohio says, the first time I heard someone say that was Conan in WCW, and I shouldn't have been talking about tossing salad when I was 12, but there we were. To 55 Versalad says, I have been summoned. Delta PhD says, cause I throw a little ranch on it. Green Dragon 14 says, tossing the salad, UK, is throwing up. Kaj 1986 says, I believe it was made famous from Chris Rock's stand-up comedy Bring the Pain. He brought it up how he saw a HBO documentary of how point if a new inmate wants to buy drugs to test or interdict him, the drug seller would make him eat his ass with jello or syrup a toss in salad. Jason 8001 says, bacon bits. Abaddon Hope says, one guy called it a PBJ and ass sandwich. Then followed it up with and you're gonna be calling it lunch. Lion is 3 says, wait till you hear about rusty trombones. r/TooAfraidToAsk. Monkey Nose says, do people who claim to never get hangovers jump out of bed energetic and bright-eyed the morning after heavy drinking? Do they wake up the next morning after getting blackout drunk as if nothing happened, perfectly healthy, awake, and energetic like someone who got a good night's sleep? Glad Mortgage 5604 says, I think it usually just means they don't suffer, their head isn't splitting, they don't feel nauseous etc. Pretty sure they still notice a dearth of energy, concentration etc. And even if they don't notice it, the number of former drinkers who notice an elevation in mood and energy after they stop. Crap sleep, dehydration, and depressants aren't good for your well-being. Satan's Logitarist says, do people ever jump out of bed energetically in the morning? I can honestly say I've never once experienced that in my entire life. Shupao says, no, but I don't on any regular morning either. However, I don't wake up nauseous with a terrible headache. I feel normal. Rika Greyfu says, when I exercised a lot and ate healthy, I could get very drunk, wake up the next day, and go for a jog without issue. I never got blackout drunk though. I was in my mid-30s at that time, just to add more perspective. Ritakoa says, I find it hard to imagine anyone doing that. I think they simply mean they don't suffer hangovers and wake up as they normally would. Midnight Cyan 12 says, my friend is one of those people, and I hate him for it. Joled says, when I was younger I never got hangovers. I didn't feel any different the next day than I normally do. I've never been bright-eyed and bushy-tailed in the mornings, but the alcohol didn't change that. And I used to tie one on a couple of times per month with the best of them. Now that I'm in my 40s, I definitely feel it the next day if I have more than 2 or 3 drinks in an evening. Slight headache, feeling tired and run down, like I'm getting sick, etc. Serabk says, I wake up normal. A bit more tired, because I usually sleep less hours than I normally would, but other than that yes. Feeling Prophet 9473 says, as someone who's a morning person and never gets hangovers, yeah. I can be out until 4 AM and wake up at 7 AM and start my day. Nightgasm says, I used to get hangovers, but haven't in decades. Sometimes I'll be very tired because I got crappy sleep due to the alcohol, but I feel fine otherwise. Sparko Marco says, I don't get hangovers, but I also don't get blackout drunk either. I know my limits, so when I get to the right stage of merrily drunk I'll limit myself to stay that way, then make sure I have some greasy takeaway food like a kebab, burger or pizza before I go home, and then I wake up feeling the same as I normally would. Been doing that since I was 14, never had a hangover in 30 years since, although I only get drunk once or twice a year now. Marlon Oranges says, when I've had a lot to drink, the next day I almost never feel sick or have a headache, so no hangover as such. However, I'm very sluggish most of the day even after a good 8 hours sleep. Suberta Karks says, no, they just get up feeling pretty much how they would have felt if they hadn't been drinking. Spoda 1975 says, I changed my definition of hangover. If I'm not operating at 100%, then I'm hungover. I may not even have any alcohol in my system, but I have no energy, didn't get quality sleep and just unmotivated. Foreign Proposal 4597 says, I've never experienced a hangover, and I find that usually I wake up feeling good cause of the deep sleep. IDK if I'd say energetic, but I'll usually wake up, shower and just do whatever I had planned. The sleep itself isn't long, usually 3-5 hours, but I feel better than when I sleep 8 hours sometimes. The one thing is that I usually wake up hungry regardless if I had my chicken nuggets on the way home. Fish in a Bowl 11 says, I'm a heavy drinker, unfortunately. And while I very rarely get blackout drunk, I certainly am drunk too often. I never get hungover. I wake up every day before 6 AM without an alarm. I may not jump straight out of bed energetically, but I'm certainly up and starting the day within 5 minutes of opening my eyes. That's the same whether I've drank the day before or not. r/TooAfraidToAsk. Specialist Zone 9335 says, Horny AF. Me 30 female and partner 31 male have been fighting for the last few months. We finally made it to talking terms, but are still sleeping in separate rooms. We are fighting over his porn addiction, but he never wants to have sex with me. I have tried many ways to encourage him to just come take it from me essentially, but he prefers his hand over me. I would love to just go into his room and seduce him, but I have tried seducing him before this fight and nothing worked. Other than spending more money on toys or looking elsewhere, at least for now, or until I'm officially separated. Are there any other options on how to satisfy my needs? Or if I do just need to buy more toys, which one do I buy? My current ones do the job most of the time, but are getting harder to satisfy me. Glitteriskius says, dump him, seriously, this cannot be worth it. What a waste of your time. Inluck 998 says, even though you invested a lot of time and energy into the relationship, this should never be an argument to keep going with it. You've invested a lot and got little in return. It's time to find someone that fulfills your needs too. Zoatic says, try to have a serious conversation with him one final time about this topic. If it doesn't work and you don't come to a conclusion that satisfies both of your needs, then dump him. Not having sex in the relationship is one thing if both are alright with it. If one wants to have it, but the other one is not as sexually active, it's hard but still manageable under certain conditions. But if both are sexually active, but one likes to rather watch porn than to have the real deal, that's a red flag and very questionable. Porn addiction is a real thing, so he really needs to seek help, and dumping him may move him to do that. QQQZZPPMM says, I say dump him and find a guy that actually thinks you're sexy and will care about you. Good luck. WorriedAd7348 says, I went through something very similar in my last relationship and I ended it. I spent so much time and effort trying to seduce him, suggesting things we could try, basically anything. But it made zero difference. It was insanely difficult to leave that 14-year relationship for that reason, but it was the right thing to do. I'm now in a very loving relationship with an amazing sex life. Don't compromise on your needs. You deserve someone who loves you and wants you. Eothus45 says, the Lord Buddha once stated that in our lives we will be separated from the ones who we love. This is an unfortunate reality of the human experience. That being said, the fact he isn't willing to sacrifice his addiction to have sex with a woman he loves is very telling of his character. I'm sorry, but leaving him will be much more beneficial for your life in the long run. Psychopath says, dump him and go out with me lol. Argonx Gaming says, porn addiction isn't about being horny and wanting sex, it's about emotional coping by a powerful physiological distraction, like many other addictions. You can't help someone with an addiction unless they are willing to do so much hard work on themselves. But if he is willing, encourage him to seek therapy, and if he is worth it to you, support him on that tough journey. If he is not willing to work on it at all, I think you're better off finding someone else, because literally nothing can be done about it at that point. That advice aside, judging from this post, which is limited info, I'm not hearing a lot of teamwork going on in your relationship. You have your needs, and they clearly aren't being satisfied by your partner, but I'm not hearing from either of you that you're trying to understand what's going on with the other person, and why the fighting is even happening. If that's an accurate reflection of your relationship, then it really is better to just break up, because you'll face this same impasse, no matter what the issue might be, if that is your approach. Again, only going off of this post, which isn't the whole story. Radiant Candra says, what a dumbus. Probably time to think about moving on. Whiteleon13 says, you just not hot. Do better, both of you. Mighty Rivers says, you've done what you could, now is time for him to handle it on its own. Diary McCanna says, he doesn't appreciate you in any way, the thing of wanting you, or desire you needs to come in a natural way. I know it's hard, because you invested so much time in him, but seriously, it's better to move on than stay with that man. Also, it's not time wasted at all, because in the future, will help you to recognize a person that really likes you or don't. r/TooAfraidToAsk. Low Attorney 5187 says, is it an interview red flag to say you quit your manager? I recently left a company because my manager was terrible. As I get ready for interviews, do you think hiring managers would be okay with me saying that I didn't like my manager as my reason for leaving? Or do I need to make something else up? This was a first-time manager who micromanaged, couldn't take feedback, was very emotional in their decisions, and would always ask the same questions because they couldn't remember anything. Thanks. Fat says first he says. Don't ever put down or cast a negative light on former employers because it actually makes you look bad. Jigger Phantom says. It needs to phrase more professionally. Terrible quote 3561 says. I definitely phrase it more like it became a toxic work environment or something instead of because you didn't like your boss. Poppy Willowa says. In discussing past employment experiences during interviews, the art of diplomacy is key. Frame your departure as a pursuit for growth and alignment with personal values and career goals, rather than focusing solely on the negatives of your past job environment. Discuss the proactive measures you took to improve the situation, and emphasize the positive takeaways and the professional skills you honed. This subtle shift in narrative can demonstrate maturity and a forward-thinking mindset, which is far more appealing to potential employers. Cotton Candy Monday says. You need to make something up. I made the mistake of doing this, and it's the first interview where I didn't get the job lol. It just flew out of my mouth, like my brain was on autopilot, and I just vomited up the exact reasons I hated a job. They want you to lie to them, lie. As soon as I said it I knew I'd ed up. Don't say it. Delta Gooden says. No. Never indicate that you left for any reason related to your last employer being bad. Just lies that make you explain why you left. Tell them that you would have lived to keep working there, but you had a family situation that needed to be addressed, and your attention needed to be there for an extended time. Something like that. Corpus don't gaff how toxic your last boss was. They want compliant workers. They will never ever take your side, ever. Zgriz says. You need to come up with reasons that don't sound petty, and what you describe sounds like that. Any hiring manager is going to see that as employee cannot take direction and employee resists policy. The appropriate response to your old job would have been to raise your issues with their manager and to follow that advice. Until you become self-employed, you will always have managers that do things you do not like. Learning how to manage your manager while saving your sanity is the difference between success and failure in a job. Eastern Bro 9173 says. Don't make it personal, rather just phrase it as something along the lines of the company culture changed in a negative direction, and if they ask how, follow it up with mentioning excessive micromanagement, emotions-based reasoning, and poor reflection of the reality by the management. Strong Second 2446 says. Be sure to prepare to talk about the steps you took to get over the management differences and what made you ultimately decide to leave. You don't want it to seem like you were just a stubborn disgruntled employee. Real Big Talker says. Agree with most of the comments, don't flat out say anything negative. But you can use this answer to say more than boilerplate stuff. 1. You can use it to highlight something about yourself. I've used your exact situation with a micromanager to highlight my ability as a self-starter and independent worker. Take why some of their behavior irritates you, and use it to show what it's like to work with you. 2. An interview is about sussing out if you'll like working there too, not just getting the job at all costs. So if you say you're a self-starter, but they are micromanagers too, they'll rule you out, and you'll save yourself from being in the same situation again. My 2 cents is that you can use this standard question to not just save face, but sell yourself and offer information that will help determine fit. Best of luck. r/TooAfraidToAsk. DePestaf1 says. YTF, is there an old person odor? I have a very strong sense of smell, and so does my mother and sister. I think there might be some genetic factor. But some old people, and especially places like hospitals or retirement homes, get this distinct smell. I can't stand it, and I feel bad for even saying this. Both have passed away, but my grandmother used to have it, and my grandfather didn't. I'm guessing there's a biological and chemical explanation, but this is one of the things that make me scared of growing old. Fuzzera Biscuits says, persimmon soap combats it, gotta have the old person use it. Kelnoz says, short answer, oxidization of the skin. A fake. Rocket Zoom says, you're likely smelling nonanol, which is a biological side effect of aging. Apparently persimmon soap helps eliminate the odor. Linkage Patrick says, if it's a grandma it's a mashup of cold cream, beechnut gum and mothballs. Kofi Hilek 75 says, it's called nonanol. The way skin smells has to do with interactions between skin gland secretions, like sweat, and bacteria on the skin. As we age, both our skin secretions and bacteria tend to change, resulting in a slight difference in body odor. Try soap with persimmon. I use Miria, Amazon. KD Tata says, my mom and I always smell formaldehyde around elderly people. I wonder if it's what brand and how much perfume they spray, because it's always overwhelming how much you smell. Grebnor says, my grandmother didn't have that smell until she became dependent on care. She had moved into a retirement home and was independent until she lost mobility and her ability to drive. That's when her hygiene began to suffer and the smell started creeping up. Now she has a colostomy that she can't really manage without assistance, and she gets pretty stinky. I had another set of grandparents that remained fairly independent until their early 90s in a retirement home, and they never really took on the same odor. They were all responsible with their savings and were able to afford nice facilities that provided a good level of care and cleanliness. Green Dragon 14 says, healthy weight, regular showers, opening windows to air out rooms, eating food rich in antioxidants, wear natural cloth such as cotton or wool, but breathable, wearing deodorants etc. is how to reduce the smell. Sapphire Lion says, it's one of the scents I don't like. Loiseline says, I always thought that was preparation H. Drustin Astraful says, I've heard people say it's a mixture of incontinence and the smell of their organs dying from the inside, but I really doubt that's the truth. Stunning Smich says, it's totally understandable to be sensitive to smells, especially when it's something you associate with aging. Don't feel bad about it, it's a natural concern. And you're right, there are biological reasons behind it. But remember, not everyone develops that smell, and there are ways to manage it, if it does happen. C1SCO says, that's the smell of decay. Mrakoy says, hey op, what will you do when you start getting old and yeah no, start smelling old? God help Topello says, celery. Tonaclap says, I know exactly what he's talking about. I sprout mung beans on a damp paper towel in my desk drawer. Very nutritious, but they smell like death. Apofist says, it's decay. Their body's breaking down. You will have it too unless you die young. Green Q Toffs says, I think it's old people's farts. r/TooAfraidToAsk. Electrical Stable 728 says, 3 years ago I learned I have type 1 herpes. My first sign of showing was on my belly button. A few days ago, I had my second outbreak ever on my booty/leg after a random hookup. I've never had a cold sore or any other outbreaks. What does this mean? My ex and I were having sex basically every day for almost 6 months after my first showing, dated for almost 2 more years without any other issues. Morgwich says, it doesn't mean anything besides you're having a current outbreak. Herpes is a skin/mucous membrane virus, so it can occur anywhere on contact, if you touch a sore. Could be that you touched your leg after touching your belly button the first time and now you just have a recurrence. Outbreaks are usually tied to a trigger like stress, environment, or even foods. Electrical Stable 728 says, wow, even foods. Thank you for this information. I've been overthinking like crazy. Zgriz says, how do you know that is what it is? Did you self-diagnose, or is it an actual doctor's determination? It's important because type 1 doesn't typically travel around like that. It tends to confine itself to the head and face and hides in nerve endings between outbreaks. Edit to add, worldwide over 13% of people have herpes type 1. You are in large company. See your doctor. It may not be that at all. Electrical Stable 728 says, I got blood work 3 years ago after my first outbreak and tested positive for type 1. I went to the doctor yesterday to make sure my current rash is herpes type 1 and she gave me medication for now and future outbreaks. Night Owl Anna says, HSV is a very common infection with as many as 7 in 10 people, 70%, in the UK population having HSV1. I mean this is UK, but number should not be that different worldwide. Just slightly more difficult to get an estimate for. It's so common. What it means is that you have something very common. Fragrant Wasabi 858 says, I got diagnosed with genital HSV1 this year. Luckily this girl I'm FWBS with got her first outbreak at the same time, so we've been able to carry on sleeping with each other, but it's not romantic, so at some point we are both gonna have to try and get with other people. It is pretty scary knowing you're gonna have to tell your potential sexual partners that you've got herpes, and it probably will lead to a fair amount of rejection, but at the end of the day there's nothing you can do about it, so you've just gotta keep trying and figure out what works. Opposite Chart 427 says, I have been taking acyclovir every other day for several decades and never had another outbreak. Speciburrito says, it means you have type 1 herpes. Ask me about my cats says, how do you know you have herpes 1? Did you confirm it with a doctor? Radiant Candra says, is type 1 the common sex one? Lawful says, HSV1 is incredibly common. That said, talk to your doctor about best strategies to prevent outbreaks. As4easy says, if I remember correctly, you may be unlikely to have another outbreak after this one, just in case you want some good news. From what I remember reading, if your outbreaks are spaced that far apart, there's a good chance it'll just be dormant after that, if you don't actually have it orally. Google sucks now, otherwise I'd try and find the article that I got that from. I think it was from the Mayo Clinic. Pro tip, if you need to disclose, lead by asking if they've ever had cold sores before, or if they mind if you've had them before. A lot of people aren't aware that there's 2 types, and a surprisingly high number of people who have had cold sores don't know that that means that they have HSV1. Some people will freak out once they hear herpes, completely unaware that they caught exactly what you have back when they were like 5, sharing chapstick with their auntie or something lol. r/TooAfraidToAsk. Your Priensis says, how do I know if I'm really in love or just infatuated? I've been in a relationship for some time, and I have developed strong feelings for the person. However, I'm unsure whether what I'm feeling is genuine love or simply infatuation. What are the telltale signs or feelings that can help me distinguish between the two and gain a better understanding of my emotions? Bob's your uncle says, I always trust my gut and time. If it gets stronger or evens out to the point where you can actually step back and say yes, I love this person, rather than just getting giddy over the superficial things, then it could be love. Examine what means the most to you in a partner and then check the boxes with this person to see if they fit. It sounds manufactured, but the difference is that you think about the important things that make you fall in love with someone. Not just a giggle, or their style, or whether they're hot or not. It's a combination of things that make the perfect fit to hit you in the heart. Tor says, only time can tell. Lunasra just says, whatever it is, don't try to control it by naming it. Love is such a diverse and ambiguous feeling. It's completely different for each person. If you have a good time with this person and you feel happy right now, stop thinking so much and enjoy it. Time will tell if it lasts, but if you are happy now, you are happy now. Matlina says, there is not perfect answer to that, but I'll try with a list of signs, since that's what you're asking. You don't need to check every one of them, but it should give you a general idea. Infatuated, the person seems perfect to you. You don't acknowledge their flaws. Bonus points if people around you have pointed them out, and you just don't see it. They make you feel intense stuff, in an almost addictive way. The negative emotions also tend to be very intense. You don't deal with hard situations together, and sex-related behavior is your most effective way to deal with issues you have with each other. In love, the person feels right. You know their flaws and you can deal with them. What you do together feels right and it's mostly positive. It doesn't seem complicated for both of you to deal with hard situations together. Also, you're right to be confused. I see some naive comments, like you'll know, when it's love, like people never made awful decisions based on infatuation mistaken for love. Gamer 32145 says, love is a choice, infatuation is a feeling. Gloomygloom says, as a guy, you jerk off, and if you still have the same feelings after, you're in love. As a girl, I dunno. Western Cook 8422 says, do you know them? Do you listen to them? Do you see them as an equal? Would you want what's best for them, even if that means taking yourself out of the picture? Do you support their dreams? Do you trust them? Do they know you? If you answered yes to all of those questions, then I think that's love. Infatuation is more self-centered than love, so that's how you tell the difference. Correct Sprinkles 21 says, you didn't specify what some time means in your case. A big part of knowing is taking your time. No rush, no big decisions. Get to know them well. Give yourself plenty of time to see them at both their best and their worst. Don't ignore flaws and annoyances. If you've been together 3 to 6 months, it could be love, but could easily just be infatuation. Only time will tell. If you've been together a year or more, spent a lot of time together in person, gone through stressful situations together, had difficult conversations about important topics, disagreed about things, and still adore them, it's probably love. Infatuation is an emotional high. People tend to ignore problems and questions in pursuit of that high. People tend to lie to themselves about what they'll tolerate long term, because their brain is flooded with feel-good hormones. Love involves those feel-good hormones, but it also involves mutual respect and admiration and the willingness to maintain that despite each other's faults and foibles. With love, you value the person for more than the feelings they give you. There is an element of choice with real love that bridges the gap between good times, when the emotional high has dropped a bit. Odd Performance 4703 says, if you still feel the same way about them 2 years from now, it's probably love. Not sure how long you have been together, but too many people mistake infatuation, lust, etc. with love. Infatuation/lust is easy, love is not. Imho, you should date for a minimum of 6 months before moving in together, live together for 3 years before marriage, and be married for at least 5 years before you start thinking about kids, but that's just my opinion. My wife and I dated for 3 years and lived together for 4 before we got married. We were married for 9 years before we had our first kid. We just celebrated our 21st wedding anniversary on 7/26 of this year. Too many people jump into relationships/marriage and have kids before they even know the other person. Then when things get difficult, they split up / divorce, and it's the kids who suffer the most for something they had absolutely no control over. r/TooAfraidToAsk. Chipfreak says, is watching porn affected my ability to climax during sex? I 20 female, recently started a sexual relationship with another girl, 19. I'm no stranger to sex. I've been with other girls throughout my life, but I've always had the same problem. I can't come during sex. No matter what we try, it's always the same. I'm not broken. I get turned on, I can feel good during it, but I can never come. The worst part is, I know it's not her fault. I know that she's doing everything she can, and it's good. It's amazing actually. But I've never climaxed during it, and she knows it. And I feel like she's starting to blame herself for that. I can't say look, no hands, so I came to the conclusion that maybe it's because of the porn I watch. I jerk off like once or twice during the week. The videos I watch differ, depending on how I'm feeling. It's usually lesbian, gay, straight or animated. I don't really care, as long as it gets me off. But I'm afraid that, because I watch so many variations of porn, it's affecting my mindset during sex. I don't know what to do too long, didn't read, I can't come, my girl is amazing at it, but I'm a juggler when it comes to porn variations, so I'm afraid I'm ed in the head. PS. English is not my first language, so PLS be understanding. Elegant Pun says, repost this to r/actual lesbians. It might just be that you haven't been touched in the ways you like and the ways your body is sensitized. My body needs a particular kind of touch, and it's easiest and fastest for me to provide that rather than a partner. Doesn't mean I'm not into sex, doesn't mean I'm not into my partner, it just means this is what's easiest for my body. Talk to your partner about how you like being touched, teach her how to touch you. Communicate more openly, and don't fake it. Swordifra says, it's not the porn, unless you're lying about only watching it twice a week. It's a pretty common thing not being able to come with others present, and it's probably rooted in an insecurity or some other mental block. You might have to go see a pro therapist to help you pinpoint the root of the issue. Dryhawk9683 says, coming is I'm intimate and you're probably scared to come in front of other people. Mental block. Dana40 says, stop beating off until you can orgasm with your girl. If that doesn't work, try bringing porn into your bedroom festivities. If you think your girl would be okay with it. Or have sex for however long and then pull out and beat that thing. App1MSCH says, I dated a girl who was bad at faking it. I told her she didn't need to fake it. She told me she's never been able to orgasm with a partner. I told her it was okay and to stop trying. We were just going to have fun going forward. We were hiking for the scenery and not climbing K2. She started to relax and accept this approach. She stopped working at trying to have one. In short order, it was clear she had gotten over her issue, grabbed my head, and said, if you stop, I'll kill you. Needless to say, things worked out. It's unlikely that it's porn. It could be masturbation, but twice a week would be rookie numbers. More likely, you're worried about it. You're trying. You're putting a ton of energy into the process in order to climb a mountain that you've failed to climb repeatedly before. And have no confidence that you'll actually be successful this time. It's frustrating. It's depressing. It can be embarrassing, and none of that is helping. Your best chance is to talk to your partner. Tell her that this is difficult for you, and the more you try, the more difficult it becomes. Remove the expectations. Remove the effort/burden. Set them low and reassure her that this is like telling someone depressed to just stop being sad. The solution isn't something that's as easy as trying harder. In fact, the harder you try, the more difficult it'll be. Remove the expectations and pressure. Make it feel normal and acceptable. It is likely that the removal of this pressure will enable you to lock in when you feel it and not lose it due to pressure or worry. If you're fortunate, you'll tell her, if you frick, I'm stop, I'll kill you. And things will get easier from. Yellow Orchid says, I'm 36 and still have this problem. I think it's because I need more mental stimulation than just physical, and it would take a really kinky person who was willing to like or hate things to get me off. Maximum Lemon 5247 says, sometimes it's just as simple as a change of pace. Try something new that you're both into. See if the change and thrill can make a bigger impact. Jaques Fox says, it's not porn. You're probably still nervous or your body just take a bit more for you to climax. You are the only one who can perfectly stimulate yourself because you know how, and when it feels good down there, everyone else doesn't feel what you're feeling, so they can only do so much. Communicating with your partner is the most important so both of you won't blame yourselves for something out of your control. Nijine says, yes. That's the short answer to the question. r/TooAfraidToAsk. Real Willingness 1004 says, people who have been cheated on, what were signs that you noticed either during or after the relationship that your partner was cheating on you? Thegudrusleth says, blaming you for it or talking to / checking out other PPL. Being extra clingy around specific people. Straight talking to other PPL a little too much. Getting defensive when talking about it. Asking about a threesome or being poly. Texting a lot. Texting or hanging with someone too much. Them being distant, especially romantically. Wanting to hang or invite some too much. Them laughing too much at someone else's jokes. Motivated Idiot says, my girlfriend, ex now, at the time absolutely refused to get along with my best friend, like she didn't even want to go to a reunion / party if he was going to be there. Always told me that she just didn't get along with him and that he was an idiot and so forth. Turns out they were sleeping together throughout most of the relationship. Ritpositrid says, it started with her getting more withdrawn and I wrote it off as depression. I actually worried about her. Then she got really protective of her phone, had it with her all the time. She started sleeping on the couch, something she always did off and on, so by itself it was not a red flag. Had her phone with her all the time including all night, and lost interest in sex. Then I found some receipts for gifts that didn't make sense, like for men's pajamas. Then she went away for a girls' weekend trip to the beach, and her friends called our home the next day telling her to bail since the weather sucked. But she had told me she was already there. It's embarrassing now, but I accepted her lies about all these things. Our relationship was great. Why would she cheat? And when did she have the time? Answer: cheaters are very clever about making time. Then I found another receipt that she had clearly tried to hide, and I was done believing her lies. After a lot of tears and denial, she finally started confessing. I got trickle truths for. Precipe 1234 says, not entirely cheated on, but a partner did have a weird situationship they hid from me for a few years, and I noticed when it was more active they'd get mad at me for everything, literally. I'd ask if we could stop for a snack while running errands because I was hungry, and they'd blow up on me. It was like they were trying to find reasons to justify their shitty behavior. They also would get hella distant. Like, we'd go from texting about our day and what we were up to radio silence, and then when I'd ask what they were up to they'd blow up and still not even tell me. I finally figured out it was on days they were likely to run into this other person, so they were hoping I'd stay away so neither of us would find out about the other. Lee Arthur Golden says, the phone was the biggie. he would be on it texting away, but I had zero access to its secretive phone calls. Hiding cell phone, acting different, short-tempered, distant, defensive, etc. Picking fights over trivial things in order to get one of us to leave the house, withdrawing from me/family/friends. Little input into future plans with me. Extreme interest in exercise/diet. More time at the gym. New cologne. New wardrobe, GFTS from her, buying his own underwear, letting me cry over relationship issues and don't change. Secret email accounts. Up on computer late at night. Closing dialog windows on the computer when I walked into the room. Erasing computer history after every use. Comes home late more from work. Claims to work overtime, yet nothing to show for it, lying about where he was coming home late, saying just lost track of time. Offers to go to the store when you usually wouldn't. Passenger seat position changes. Hiding condoms. Majespectanacomatus says, we were both in college. I did notice the red flags, but thought I was overthinking things. He suddenly turned super jealous of every male friend I had. Even friends who had become mutual friends over time, and gay men. He was always on his phone, and was weirdly protective of it. At the same time, he'd try to take glances at my phone, but would get upset if I asked about it, or tried to hand the phone to him. He'd randomly accuse me of putting too much effort on my appearance. Even when wearing my most plain jeans and t-shirts, he hid his relationship status on Facebook, and got super defensive when I asked about it. He said he felt like his contacts would try to woo me or sabotage the relationship because he'd never been happier. He suddenly hated how he looked in pictures from both of us, and r/TooAfraidToAsk. Tub3ster says, 34M. Somebody recently obtained compromising sexual material of me. How do I live with it? Hello Reddit, I'm a 34-year-old male. Somebody recently obtained compromising sexual content of me. I haven't indulged in anything wrong like infidelity, but the content paints me in an embarrassing light. I have informed the authorities, but there is little hope that they will be able to fully erase the evidence. As to my understanding, these guys seem to be some sort of underground/organized gang of sorts in a second/third world country that I have ties with. I have aspirations for pursuits that may involve the limelight, so there is a good possibility that this could come back and bite me in the future. I believe this could be an issue, even if I were to choose professions that were conventional, and this is definitely going to remain a thorn in my legacy for a few generations. I've come to terms with what has happened, but the tension that something could happen is too strong. This constantly keeps popping up every time I have to make a major decision, and it is making me overthink making decisions involving progression/ambitions, as I'm unable to realistically look past the fact that this is real dirt that's available on me, with the potential to destroy everything. How can something like this have so much power? It's beyond logic. I have immense mental strength and the belief that I can get through any situation. But this, I have no words. If any of you have been through something similar, how did you cope with it? If the compromising material is still out there, how do you deal with the everyday? Any advice or inputs you may have with respect to this is much appreciated. Thank you for taking the time to read my. Tyler S. Burden says, accept it. Own it. Be ready to talk about it, to shout about it from the rooftops the moment you have to. Then it has no power. Then it's just a thing about your past. Never lie about it. Share it with those close to you in advance. Be prepared to share it with your relevant world when you need to, without shame or regret. You only have to do the work of accepting this part of yourself and integrating it into the whole of your story. Inspectamital says, are you being blackmailed for money by somebody you don't know? If so, this post might make sense for r/scams. Pascarichan says, this scammers send a lot of emails such as, Hello my prey, I have dirty photos of you, blah blah blah, pay me dollar sign or else waiting for people to fall for the scam and pay the extortion. Flatulenson says, each passing day they'll mayo that's not me, that's deepfake tech excuse gets stronger. Zizal00 says, how'd it happen? Because these things don't just happen. If you know how it happened, maybe don't be doing that if you care about the consequences. End of the day, it's out there, you can't erase it, it exists. But as long as it's relatively normal, nobody will really care. You will, and that's valid, and it sucks it happened to you, and it's at present gonna feel pretty mortifying and all that, but almost everyone else in the world who does not know you will not care, will not link you to it, and will not action anything even if they did. Don't engage further with the scammers, don't offer them any more info about you or your life, your family, your friends, your job. Try to realize that everyone is a naked person. Everyone has felt embarrassment. Everyone has done stupid stuff. The embarrassment you feel will fade. It'll also pop up randomly in your head at night like those cringe things you said to people when you were a teenager. But like those things, you'll be the only one ruminating on it. And like those, it'll go away. Will it affect your life going forward? Most likely not. Worst case scenario where it does, what's the real repercussion? You get embarrassed again. It costs you an opportunity? Oh well. There are plenty of opportunities we miss out on every day without knowing it. We still survive. Raolanx3 says, all I can say is that when it comes to porn, people aren't considering the people they watch as actual people. If you aren't famous, porn is so disconnected to real life. And no offense, as you're a male, there's not a large market for you. You have been violated of your privacy. That's traumatizing. Your body is the one thing you own in this world. I do recommend reporting it, but if you don't feel comfortable doing so, know you aren't alone. There's thousands of people out there that have been violated and not felt they have enough of a case to report. I'm sorry op. Hondex says, if you aren't doing anything unethical or illegal, then what's the problem? Let them leak it, it doesn't matter. You can always say someone hacked your private photos/videos and you can move forward with formal charges. It can't hurt you unless you let it hurt you. Several movie and singer stars had their nudes leaked and they didn't lose a cent. You will be fine. Always 2 and EB3 Street says, does the compromising material involve secretive homosexual stuff? If it ever comes to light, blame it on AI lol. AI can make such real looking fakes nowadays. Mrakane Snitcher says, if it's not illegal then don't worry about it honestly. People are into kinky shit and it's not a big deal. It's not like when you get famous you will be doing porn of it if it comes out. Just block and ignore them is my advice and good luck on your career. Radioactive Sperm says, people will forget faster than you think. My boyfriend sent someone nudes that he met online back before we were together. The person told him they'd send the pics to all his FB friends if he didn't send them money. He said, frick you. They actually did send the pics. A few people messaged my boyfriend to say nice thing, and the rest just ignored it lol. If you're not a celebrity, no one really cares. r/TooAfraidToAsk. Efficient Fish 9715 says, can my boyfriend go into an adult store? For reference, I live in New South Wales, Australia and I'm 18 and my boyfriend is 17. Can I bring him inside the adult store with me, or does he have to wait in the car? My friend told me that I can take him inside but it doesn't seem right haha. Thank you. Potato 123 says, nope. Ed and be of age. The trouble for it from both you and the store if you guys get caught is not worth it. On paper. Eye roll. If you don't act like kids or the store clerk doesn't care, then it shouldn't be an issue. Besides, you guys can just pop on the website, check it out together, and you can go buy it yourself while he wait outside. I used to work in one, and I had to turn away parents with children 1 to 15 years old. And they still wouldn't understand why they can't bring their 8 years old in to choose a dildo. Coburn Viper says, I have an ex-girlfriend who told me that for a few years, when she was little child, her mom worked at an adult store and she would stay with her there, at the cash desk or walking around, while her mom worked. She didn't understand why I was shocked and appalled. She tried to tell me it was a cultural difference, being in Central Europe at the time, and I was being a British American. Fist Frick Enthusiast says, no, the legislation is clear, just buy things online. Efficient Fish 9715 says, thanks, I was just hoping to waive shipping fees lol. Waskid 2005 says, research online, then buy in store? Honestly though, store selection is very limited. Peeing says, no, I've contacted New South Wales, and he is barred from all adult stores. Falconsummerthing says, you told on them? Peeing says, sorry bro, rules are rules. Lucky Tough 8823 says, while it may not be legal, as long as you guys don't cause trouble and he doesn't look too young, you'll likely never be asked. If you do, don't cause a fuss and say sorry and walk out. A-Takes says, fricking hell. Just do it. The worst that will happen is they'll ask for it and you'll have to go outside. Just be mature about it. Strumsnapdown says, just go, the worst that's gonna happen is he is told to go outside. Fricking live a little Jesus. Stevebo Beef says, I worked at a sex shop for a few years and I would get people trying to take their babies in all the time. They would sometimes get all pissy when I would tell them that their infant is still a person under the age of 18 and the laws are very clear on this. The worst was a guy that brought his kid in who had to be closer to 3 or 4. He explained that he was on the way to his girlfriend's house and needed to stop and for supplies. I felt bad for the kid. Kirkan says, I mean, legally no, but in practice, as long as you're not acting like kids, you probably won't even be eyed. If you are, just be courteous and leave. Thesad Fundracia says, before everyone gets their knickers in a knot. This is the internet, not America. The age of consent and how it's applied varies. Britapina Jeff says, wait in the Calmeo. This user is gay says, Mayo, I used to buy stuff there when I was 13 and no one gave a frick. Crescent Hive says, what nation are you from? Switchflip 333 says, are you Coddy KO? 8Rock3N says, going into an adult store at 18 is bold. I'm 19 and even I'm terrified of that because I'm basically still a child and feel like I'd get kicked out. That's all for this video. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe.